solid and consummate defender of Donald Trump and one of the greatest legal minds currently working today in Washington, D.C. He joins the show now. Mike, thank you so much for being on the program for this Trump indictment special. You've been predicting this since August. What's your take?
Well, I mean, Garland's indicting Trump, and that's something that we've known is going to happen since August, like you said, Ben, because President Trump declassified and took his personal copy of the Crossfire Hurricane presidential records, the Russian collusion hoax that blows the lid on Hillary Clinton's campaign colluding with President Obama, Vice President Biden, the Attorney General, the FBI Director, James Comey, the CIA Director, to make up the Russian collusion hoax, Crossfire Hurricane investigation that hobbled the Trump presidency for 3 years because Hillary got caught with her illegal home server as Secretary of State that was hacked by our worst enemies, containing our nation's most classified secrets. And maybe, just maybe, Russia got a copy of that before Hillary Clinton destroyed the evidence, obstructed justice in the face of a congressional subpoena. We also have very clear evidence now that Joe Biden, as vice president, took a $5 million foreign bribe from Burisma and threatened Ukraine's president that America would cut off $1 billion in aid if the Ukrainian president did not fire this Ukrainian prosecutor. And remember Joe Biden bragging that he got it done in 6 hours. This prosecutor was looking at corruption by Burisma and the Bidens. So you have clear foreign bribery. And so instead of going after Biden for his foreign bribery scheme, instead of going after Biden for having his illegal classified documents, stolen classified documents, 5 stashes in several different locations, moved several times, and even used potentially for Ukrainian funding, Garland is going to indict Trump. That's what this is all about. This is a deflection from Biden's own troubles.
It is amazing how you watch sort of the mirror image of every time that Joe Biden is in a little bit of hot water, they bring a Trump indictment. Every single time there is a little bit of heat on the Bidens, boom, here's something. Donald Trump threw his toothpick away while jaywalking into the non-recycle bin, Rikers Island.
Yeah, I mean, they've done this consistently. In 2016, again, Hillary was caught in a foreign bribery scheme and committing espionage by having her stolen records on her server, and she destroyed them. So what did they do? They cooked up the Russian collusion Crossfire Hurricane investigation on Donald Trump that hobbled his presidency. 2020, Joe Biden got caught with his corruption, his millions of dollars in foreign bribery schemes and other corruption. Every Biden, it seems, got money except for the 4-year-old granddaughter who they don't claim. What did they do? They had the 51 intel goons write the letter when they got Hunter Biden's laptop at the New York Post, America's oldest newspaper. These 51 goons colluded with the CIA and said this was a Russian disinformation campaign. Now we have clear evidence that Biden had his own stolen classified records, that he was using them potentially to secure corrupt foreign funding. Do we think that Hunter Biden all of a sudden became a geopolitical expert in Ukraine when he wrote the 22-point memo that Miranda Devine pointed out at the New York Post? No, he was clearly using classified information. They catch him with classified information. They catch him with smoking gun evidence of a $5 million foreign bribery scheme. So what do? They indict Trump. This is part of lawfare by the left to take out Trump because they fear they cannot beat him in the election in 2024. We have Alvin Bragg in New York. Garland sent Matthew Colangelo, the number 3 official in the Justice Department, to go resuscitate a zombie case in New York against Trump that had been passed over by the prior Manhattan DA, the U.S. Attorney, the Federal Election Commission, and Alvin Bragg himself, and they indicted Trump in New York on bogus charges. Jack Smith is going to indict Trump on bogus charges, the bogus crime of a former president having his presidential records in the office of former president, which is allowed by the Presidential Records Act, and the bogus crime of obstruction. It is not legally possible for Trump to have obstructed investigations into the non-crime of having his presidential records. And the Garland Justice Department is ignoring two key precedents: a 2012 Obama judge ruling holding that President Clinton was allowed to take his presidential records, including putting 8 years of highly classified recordings in his sock drawer. That was okay, but apparently it's not okay for President Trump to have his presidential records. There's also a 2019 legal opinion, that is binding on the Justice Department, that says that if there is not a crime, it is generally not possible to legally charge someone for obstruction of justice into an investigation into a non-crime. Garland is going to ignore all of this as they move forward with these charges. Here's the problem: you're going to have the lower courts in D.C. or Florida or the D.C. Circuit or even of the 11th Circuit get duped into following the Espionage Act by the Biden Justice Department instead of the Presidential Records Act. This will have to get resolved by the Supreme Court, and I fear it may not get resolved until President Trump is put back into the White House in 2024, and the Supreme Court has to resolve it then.
Yeah, you tweeted as much, that President Trump may have to pardon himself. It seems like, charging Donald Trump for the Espionage Act is insane. An act that was created before World War I, before classification. There was no classification in our federal government when they created the Espionage Act. So that's what the act was about. It should be null and void now, and it just seems... It seems like no president will ever be able to do their job ever again if you bring espionage claims against a president, because if he sits down with his kid or with his buddy and a slip of the tongue, suddenly, boom, there's prison for life.
Well, no, presidents cannot be charged with espionage because they get to decide what's classified or not. A good example of that is President Obama getting caught on a hot mic telling the Russian puppet president that he would have more negotiating room after Obama's reelection, and to go tell Vladimir, the real president, right? So that would be clear espionage if anyone other than the President of the United States or someone authorized by the President of the United States said that. And it's not espionage for a former president to take his presidential records, classified or not, to the office of former president. That is allowed by the Presidential Records Act. If that were espionage for Trump to do that, then why didn't they charge Bill Clinton for having 8 years, 79 tapes of highly classified audio recordings of his presidency, including highly classified discussions between President Clinton and foreign leaders? This is a bogus hit on Trump because he had Crossfire Hurricane documents that are so damning, and they're indicting now because then Vice President Joe Biden took a $5 million foreign bribe from Ukraine, from Burisma in Ukraine, and threatened to cut off $1 billion in U.S. funding because a prosecutor was looking at Burisma and the Biden crime family. That is why they're doing this. Everything else is political BS smokescreen.
Two quick questions for you, Mike. It boggles the mind, and I don't claim to be a particularly smart individual. Room temperature IQ over here, but man, even I can sort of figure out that real espionage would be giving political favors for money in Ukraine. Now, Lauren Boebert was on our show yesterday saying, I've seen the document. I just read it. She came directly to our show from the skiff. She was still smoking. And she sat and she said, listen, the Bidens were paid $5 million in order to get Shokin fired, in order to get the prosecutor fired that was looking into Burisma. This is what the document details. This scandal. And if you were to check the Biden activity reports, you can actually see the money come into his account. You can see the Ukrainian banks. This is the clearest case of espionage, the clearest case of selling out your home country for profit, which is the definition of espionage, that I've ever seen.
Yeah, I mean, and what's even worse, Ben, is the FBI has known this since 2017. Yes. They had a whistleblower who had worked with them for 10 years and to whom they paid $200,000 for his whistleblower activities. The FBI had this evidence in 2017, and corrupt people within the FBI, probably the same people who ran Crossfire Hurricane on Trump and hid Hillary's evidence of her pay-for-play bribery schemes at the Clinton Foundation, probably the same people are the ones who covered up Biden's bribery scheme with Burisma and Ukraine. And listen, if these allegations end up being true, and it looks like they're true, otherwise why would the FBI have this whistleblower on their payroll for $200,000 over 10 years? Where are these suspicious activity reports at the Department of Treasury? If this ends up being true, the House of Representatives cannot actually, Joe Biden can't stay in office. If he has shown in the past that he is willing to take a foreign bribe in one of the highest offices in the land and change American policy, he cannot stay on as president of the United States. And the House of Representatives needs to open immediately impeachment inquiries on both Chris Wray at the FBI along with Joe Biden, because we have this foreign corruption, and we have the FBI covering up this foreign corruption for years and years and years.
Final question for you, and again, it is pertaining to Joe Biden, and is pertaining to the special counsel that's looking into Joe Biden. Everyone's forgotten that Robert Hur is looking into Joe Biden in his own special counsel. Yet you don't hear a peep, not a squeak from a mouse about that investigation. Nothing. You don't hear anything. Nothing. Even though Joe Biden had, one, obviously no power to classify or declassify, had all of those documents illegally, as you have educated our audience that Donald Trump had his documents legally. The Presidential Record Act allows for this, and also had them inside of a secure facility. I've been to Mar-a-Lago. Dude, it was like walking into the green zone in Baghdad going to Mar-a-Lago. The layers of security, showing your passport, everything. This was one of the most secure places I've ever been in my life. It makes TSA look like child's play. And hold on, like nothing happens to Joe Biden. They're going to slow walk that. Where the hell is anything on that?
Yeah. So remember, Mar-a-Lago was used as President Trump's office when he was the president of the United States. It's obviously very secure. There's an office of the former president that's guarded by the Secret Service with secure facilities, federally funded staff with security clearances. It's very secure. These documents didn't leak for 18 months that Trump had them after he left office, until Biden went to the biased magistrate judge and got the illegal home raid to steal these documents, right? And so if you look at what is Rob Hur doing, Rob Hur is in no hurry by any means, because it's Garland who decides whether to charge or not charge here. These special counsels have to go to the attorney general to get permission to charge. And so the fact that Jack Smith is moving forward with his indictment means that Merrick Garland approved it. And that Robert Hur is not moving forward with the indictment is because Merrick Garland is not demanding it, right? And that's the difference between the two is, look, Rob Hur was the U.S. attorney in Maryland. He's very tied into Rod Rosenstein. He's very tied in to FBI Director Chris Wray. They're all part of the same deep state uniparty universe. There is no chance that Rob Hur is going to recommend charges of President Biden, even though he should, because President Biden clearly committed espionage by having 5 sets of stolen classified records moved several times from when he was a vice that he stole when he was vice president, that he stole when he was a senator. They were unguarded for years. And the president of the United States has the Presidential Records Act with the Office of Former President funded by Congress. Joe Biden had these documents next to his Corvette in his garage. He had them in an office where Hunter Biden gave a Chinese agent a key. There's evidence that they used these documents to get Ukrainian funding. There is no reason that President Trump had a home raid and Garland secretly for 2 months cooperated with Biden and let Biden's personal attorneys do searches for these records. They turned over 4 stashes before Garland got caught and had to appoint special counsel Rob Hur. Rob Hur then sent in the FBI and found the 5th stash. So what did Biden and his attorneys represent after those first 4 stashes? Did they represent that they did a diligent search for these classified records and they turned over everything? If so, how is that not obstruction of justice? Just like they're trying to claim Trump committed obstruction of justice for the affidavit. Trump can't commit obstruction of justice because he's allowed to have his records under the Presidential Records Act. So you can't obstruct investigations into non-crimes. Biden was absolutely not allowed to have his records. That is espionage. Why are there two different standards here? And it's very clear that Garland is protecting his boss, Biden, by going after Trump.
Wow. What an absolute flamethrower. I mean, final follow-up, just based on what you just said there. How much of this is Garland having piss in his Cheerios, being upset that he's not on the Supreme Court because of Donald Trump effectively, and because of you in the Senate with Chuck Grassley, and because of, I guess arguably the one thing I would absolutely tip my hat to Mitch McConnell for, which was standing firm on the Garland nomination. One, of course, they saved the country by not having this lunatic on the Supreme Court. This guy's clearly demented. But also, again, it does seem like he has a vendetta here. It seems like this is an axe to grind. Piss in his Cheerios. He's upset, and he's trying to extract vengeance here. Am I wrong?
You know, when Garland was first nominated by Biden, I thought, okay, he's just an old former
Obama
judge.
Yeah.
Excuse me. When Biden nominated Garland to Attorney General,
got it.
After he lost out his Supreme Court bid, I thought Garland's just this washed-up judge. He's going to go in and be the Attorney General. He'll be a figurehead. He's not going to cause very many problems. He'll be fair. Boy, was I wrong. This guy is very hands-on. He works late into the evening. He micromanages the departments. And I'll tell you, there have been a couple things that he has done that has just shown that this guy is a vicious, evil partisan. And it has to do with how he sicked the full force of the FBI after every grandma and goofball who trespassed into the Capitol and took selfies on January 6th. Yet he allows these illegal obstruction and intimidation campaigns outside of the homes of Supreme Court justices, even after the 1 a.m. assassination attempt against Justice Kavanaugh, his wife Ashley, and their two teenage daughters. That is clearly obstruction of justice under the statutes to do this. But he gives them amnesty because he is angry he's not on the Supreme Court. He's a partisan activist. These justices had to go to safe houses, right? And Merrick Garland let this continue. Merrick Garland arrested pro-life Christians praying outside of abortion clinics, and yet he gave amnesty to these trans terrorists who are terrorizing Catholic churches, people who are firebombing Catholic churches, crisis pregnancy centers. It is sick what Garland has done at the Justice Department. He has let that Justice Department become so politicized and so weaponized across the board. It used to just be the national security components that were so politicized. It's the entire department, and that is on Merrick Garland's doorstep. And he should be impeached and removed from office, just like Chris Wray, just like Joe Biden. What they are doing is un-American. They have turned America into a third world Marxist hellhole as they've politicized and weaponized the justice system against Trump's top aides, Trump's supporters, Supreme Court justices, families. And it's not just the conservative Supreme Court justices. They're even now going after the Chief Justice, not exactly a conservative fire breather.
We look forward to and hasten and pray for the Mike Davis 3-week reign of terror. May it come ever so soon. We need it, Mike.
You know, Ben, I will fire and indict as many people as I can during that 3-week reign of terror before I get chased out of town. It will be epic. As you say, Ben, it will be glorious. So I cannot wait.
Glorious. On to glory. God bless you, Mike. Thank you. Godspeed. Keep fighting. We deeply appreciate your wisdom.
Thank you, Ben.